All right, what's going on, guys? It is TFRLIVE.com. This is Zerilath. You are listening to Trigenesis because it is Sunday night, 6 p.m. here on the East Coast. And this is my show, as you all know. Whoa! All right, our guest is making noises. All right, guys, we got a guest tonight. This is one of my new friends and colleagues in the field here of the research into the occult, the magic, the esoteric, the meaning of the universe, and all the fun little things in between. He's a local in my universe. He's from Queens, and so he does a whole lot of local occultism too, which I want to get into all that stuff as well. Like I think he's doing some really good stuff that there ought to be people out there doing when they're trying to, put this kind of a podcast together, and to never forget that there's stuff going on even in the most mundane of your backyards. And this is the one known as New York Patriot. He is the host of the Occult Rejects podcast, or Occult Rejects and Friends, something like that. And I forget what name you wanted me to go by with you, like James or something.
Nick is fine.
Nick. Right. Yeah, Nick. I've put the link. I've put the link to your Linktree in the chat room. There may not be a chat. There may not be anybody that shows up in the chats tonight. TFR operates on multiple platforms, and they don't always come to TFRLive.com chat room to hear things. But you'll have plenty of chance to promote yourself and everything else. So yeah, we're ready to rock and roll. So Nick, why don't you tell me and everybody a little bit about yourself, and start unpacking your origin story.
Okay. Well, I'm the host of the NY Patriot show and the Occult Rejects. Started podcasting probably about 2.5 years ago. Grew up in New York. Been on Long Island my whole life. And at some point, I eventually got into magic and, eventually joined the secret society at the OTO and was in it for a decent amount of time. And then eventually I just happened to, didn't want to, drink the Kool-Aid anymore. Didn't see it to be a place that was really that great for me. And eventually left. And I guess because of being so wrapped up into magic and not really paying attention to the mundane or the regular world around me, I didn't realize how prevalent, I guess, in the last few years that the stuff I believe is in our faces. So when I had left the OTO and, for a few reasons that were going to make me start a podcast anyway, I just happened to start noticing a lot of stuff on the news, the media, politics. And I was like, was it always that prevalent and in our faces? And I was like, maybe I should start a podcast and use my experience and point out this stuff. And here I am now 2.5 years later.
Yeah, that's something odd that happens to you when you come out of your own little pocket of the world, and you don't understand the way the rest of the world sees things and is not going to see what you see. I was never a part of any kind of secret society kind of thing when I was like this. I just had, the innocent Italian Catholic upbringing, if you will, and I do mean innocent. If I didn't know better as a child, having a decent Catholic experience, I would not have taken those well-known accusations as seriously, right? You know, that would have been like, well, what are you talking about? I never saw anything like that, and I was there, right? I wasn't a choir boy, but you know, I mean, just like, you know, you have no idea. You have no idea how like all of it just kind of like sits there, and whether any of it is significant at all, right? But you've been given the hint of the significance, but nobody believes you because it sounds like some dramatic nonsense for late night like TV and movies.
Yes. Yeah, I really was, I guess, you know, like I was saying before, when I was wrapped up in, I guess, practicing magic, when I went to go join the OTO, I really had it in my mind, like, okay, this is like almost like a lifestyle change, because I assumed that was going to be like, you know, if I'm going to join this, I'm really getting into this stuff. Like I should like actually like, you know, put time and effort into it. And everything else, like I stopped with the kind of like going into conspiracies a lot because I was focused on magic. I really was kind of like out on the conspiracy community. I really like, I wasn't even following the same things anymore. Now I was following like people associated with the OTO or magic, or, you know, our podcasts focused on magic. And really, like you said, like I was, I guess, in my own bubble. And then when I had stopped with the OTO, you know, one of the reasons why I had left is because of just certain things that they were kind of like promoting at their meetings. I did like notice like quickly with politics, you know, and both sides do it, but I think it was so prevalent with the left. To me, it was like such blatant magic. I was like, yo, I gotta like say something. I mean, you know, if anybody's even gonna listen to me. But yeah, I don't know how like within 5-6 years, all of a sudden it was just like, what happened? You know, or was it that prevalent and I just never noticed?
Well, it's very, you know, right. It's very funny because it sneaks in because there's a mundane reality to magic. There's minor aspects of magic that affect the mundane, and then there's things that are much more grandiose, which require a lot more vulgar display of occultism. You know, and so you're. You know, it seems to me in my observation through my awakening, once I understood things like left and right hand path, I understood that you're seeing at least a subconscious manifestation of that in the political dynamics of any largely dualistic thinking kind of people. Right, if you've got a lot of dualism going on in the psychology that is used in your family dynamics and in your educational system dynamics, you're going to have an either-or nicely wrapped up into the controlled opposition cycle mindset, because you've got the phenomenon of left-hand path being used in left-wing politics, and then, just like with yin and yang, there's a dabble of each in the other. You know, they have enough order in their chaos to keep it as something that you can define, which gives people the security to go with it. And then the right-hand path is usually rigid, holding things down to tradition, keeping things more predictable, so on and so forth. But then understands that once in a while you have to be innovative and break pattern to have an important breakthrough about your own personal ideals, right? And then that's the chaos that kind of lingers there in the right hand, right? And so that's why there's so much talk about the shades of gray, and then you don't want to make it a shades of gray thing because evil is evil, and you know, you start having that moral conversation, and that's what makes magic really important, is having that moral conversation.
Oh yeah, I think that, you know, I do stress that a lot. Like, I think a lot of people sometimes, or maybe the whole idea of it or the term used, like, you know, when people are doing shadow work, I feel like it's kind of gotten woo-wooed, that whole phrase. Or from experiences with me in the OTO and just knowing other magicians and witches, it almost seems like when, you know, shadow work ends up becoming like, you end up latching onto it and not getting rid of it. But I do think like a constant moral inventory or constant, like, it doesn't have to be major, but like just shadow work kind of constantly, like on your own self. That's kind of like, I think like the positive chaos within yourself is because you're constantly like trying to change the negative aspects of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that is like very, very important, actually.
Yeah. And I think because many people have latched on to the Jungian concept of shadow work and hopefully also the individuation process, because doing shadow work in the collectivist process, I don't know about that, right? But that would obviously be the other side of the spectrum, wouldn't it? But when it comes to like shadow work, there seems like I'm starting to notice how pervasive, like, and I'm all about it. I do shadow work for myself as well, right? But you know, everybody who has a spiritual side to their modern thinking in philosophy and such, you know, they need at least to have Jung in their arsenal of terms, if not a foundational line of thought. And I've certainly for a long time been very Jungian foundational. I don't agree with Jung on his alchemical terminology to explain, like, he's telling certain truths, but he's muddying up the interpretation with a poor understanding of internal alchemy because he has no practical foundation of alchemy, right? Because then that changes your relationship with the Jungian shadow process versus real shadow work done in the physical with alchemy, because there's the blackening phase is a big part of it, which is kind of like you identifying it before you get started on the work, almost. Right? And so this shadow is getting into a very broad and amorphous interpretation of itself because everybody's working it out in different ways. I mean, there's New Agers doing the love and light thing that have a relationship to the Jungian shadow work and do their own kind. There's, of course, all the witches and neo-shamans and everyone else out there. Anybody on a metaphysical kick has some sort of spin on Jung, because we need that analytical, psychological in order to convey ourselves as shamans, magi, occultists, witches, priests, and so on and so forth. And so I think it's important to know what shadow work is and what shadow work isn't.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned Jung. He's even a saint in the OTO too. So like,
interesting.
When I realized that, like you were even saying before, sometimes like you might muddy the waters.
Yeah.
I'm just taking a guess. Like if the OTO sees him as a saint, they must at least think he was a cultist or a magician in himself. And at that point, then you have to question what he's writing about. Because you may not be seeing it the way he's thinking, you know?
Right. Exactly. You know, because Jung definitely made psychology into its own metaphysics. He made psychology a metaphysical internal process to get to certain rational thoughts, and with the ultimate goal of attaining effectively maturity, right? Like there was a goal. It wasn't just philosophizing. It was psychology for the sake of trying to help someone get better by going through a behavioral process to condition their mind to handle some struggles in life that you're having, because your existential crises and identity crises are getting in the way of your ultimate happiness in the process of achieving a good life.
But yeah, he definitely is mentioned in the. I don't know if he's somebody that, you know, when it comes to the Gnostic Mass in the OTO, there's a part where they read off saints, and there's ones that are you have to, and then there's like a long list of ones you can add. But he definitely is in there. I don't know if he's a staple but I have heard his name, and he is on the list.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Well, I don't
There's
know.
actually a few people on, like Francis Bacon, a lot of people on there that I was like,
do they have it published somewhere? The standards?
No, yeah.
Or okay. So there's standards. It's not just the leader of the sects got together and had a vote or something, right?
Oh no, yeah. There's ones that have to be mentioned, and it's not like you can add anybody. You like whoever the deacon is, they can't just toss names in there. Right. There's a specific set that has to be said, and then if you want to, I guess maybe try to show off, or there was other people that you like, you can memorize more names and then add them.
Okay, interesting. All right, all right. That makes I think that makes sense in a certain way. I mean, like it's do you think? Okay, so what do you think was what do you think there's any notoriety going on with the OTO? Do you think that there's like some serious like evil that you had to skirk off? Because things can be evil from the unconscious, like people just doing stuff selfishly and they don't notice because they don't care and they don't want to hear it that they're doing something evil, or what? What do you think's going on in the OTO and those energies?
From my experience with the OTO, originally it wasn't even like my first choice to join. I had gotten involved, like, just real quick. I guess I'll try to make this. Originally I was much more into conspiracies, and eventually, like, I got into like David Icke, Michael Tsarian, Maxwell. A lot of people that were Passio, a lot of people that were very heavily into occultism. So I got interested in that, and then I started like, I guess digging into stuff like that. And eventually I was just like, I don't think I'm still going to know what magic is when I'm worried about chasing a name in a lodge, or this started there, that started there. Like, I still don't know what it is that they're using or how they're doing it or whatever. So I was like, maybe I should start, looking into this stuff. And I bought some books, started reading them. Got more of like ceremonial magic stuff instead of witchcraft and instead of Wicca type stuff. And I even started to like eventually notice discrepancies between, the same ritual that's supposed to be done the same way in different books. And I was like, well, I don't know which, like, obviously I can't even go buy books, or reputable authors, because I'm getting two different things.
Right.
So I started looking into secret societies near me. I was living in Queens at the time. And when I looked, I didn't really notice anything from the Golden Dawn. The Freemasons for magic, like that would be like an investment where I'd have to be there for a while. And I wasn't looking to do that. I was trying to find a place that like you kind of started as soon as you walked in the door, it was in your face. And I happened to check, and I was like, wow, there's an OTO lodge about 25 minutes away. And I wasn't the hugest fan of Crowley. I did think he was an occult genius in some aspects, and he obviously seemed to impact the occult society. So I was interested in some of his stuff, or at least like his he published a lot of like things that would be like rituals, but not that ones that he made. Just ones that the Golden Dawn uses, pretty much any ceremonial magic.
Yeah.
So like I was kind of like using those, his AA publications or his Libers, because they were pretty much just like, step by step. It wasn't filled with a lot of garbage, even though like you still couldn't understand half of the stuff he did add into it.
Did you experiment? Did you do any? Did you try some spells out for yourself?
Well, I mean, before I even joined the OTO, I was getting into. I was really only banishing. I was just doing the lesser banishing ritual. Probably once or twice a day. I might do the middle pillar meditation. But I was much more into like kind of like meditations at the beginning. I wasn't really trying to. I really didn't want to start messing around with stuff like that. And when I wanted to learn what it was, I did, in some ways, think that part of it was like psychological. So like I knew like I was kind of doing it to change myself in a sense. Again, probably not in the way that it ended up at the end. I don't know. I guess like my ideas were just so like mundane still compared to like what magic was. My idea of it was like still off in the beginning, but I did think like I'd be doing some self like inventory. So like make it this a short story. Eventually, I was just like, all right, I'm gonna have to check out secret societies, and like I said, the OTO was close to me. These places are not hard to find if you just Google them, and I found their website, and they have like the locations of all their places in the United States and all their information too, like ways to contact them. So when I realized that there was one close to me, all their contact information was there too, any social media. So I emailed them and I let them know that I was interested in coming to a Gnostic Mass that was on their calendar. And I don't know, 2 weeks later, I ended up going. And then, 5, 6 years later on, I found myself like leaving. But, that's how it eventually started. I sent an email. They let me know to contact them on the day that I was coming. And then I emailed them again. And then they gave me all the information of where it was and how to get there and blah, blah, blah. And I went. And even though it still was a little shocking, I ended up staying. And ended up becoming a member and going through initiations.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So like you just kind of like you kind of like
Well,
just
I
went through
knew from
the
the
what you went
beginning
through
it was
the
never
like
gonna.
you went through the motions there, got meditation out of it because you were there for quite a few years, and you must have made friends.
Yeah. There was a few people. There was a kid out east, not too far from me originally before I ended up in Queens. So yeah, I spoke to. There was probably a handful of dudes that I talked to, and there was some people that I did at the beginning believe that like that they knew their stuff. I had to just assume that, and that was because of other people like idolizing them when they walk in. So I just assumed, oh, they must know what they're doing.
Right.
Which I found interesting. Like, if you're magicians, I don't know, you shouldn't really be idolizing, but whatever. Um, so there was people there that, but for the most part, I knew when I got there, and even when I was there that first time, I even knew like if I stay, I just don't think I'll make this home. Like I knew it was never going to be permanent to begin with. It's more of the fact of that I wanted to meet people in person that I could actually learn from or ask or be like, is this correct? What things should I go by? Have you gotten results?
And
Even though my results was wrong then, in my opinion.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, once you actually kind of like take an actual like look, like biography wise, into the process of Aleister Crowley, like he went around all the secret societies. So a lot of secret societies kind of got like guilt by association because of his presence there and what he was like over there, right? Because he ran with Golden Dawn, he ran like kind of started Thelema, but wasn't, but I guess it wasn't like a big deal, to him personally so much. He was he rolled with Masons and like all these different, different orders that. Like back in the day, it's just like you went and wanted to check out the OTO. These are secret societies that had like, we'll never offer. You ask and we'll see if we're interested or something like that, right? It's just like as a secret society, it's just like low profile. They don't advertise. It's just like the seekers will come to us and we are as big as we are, but we are pure because we don't try to rope the uninterested in, right? And so that was Crowley, and so that was also like me and my mystical journey. Like that mystical journey literally started with as something as simple as going from Catholic to, oh well, my new friend I made down the street, his dad is the pastor of a church. I'm gonna go check that out, and so I go from Catholic to, during my tweens and teens, becoming evangelical Christian, Assembly of God, speaking in tongues at a certain point, getting really overzealously into it. It makes more sense now. Like when I look into astrology, I see where my Jupiter is placed. I'm just like, oh, that's why I was a religious zealot, and I still sort of am a religious zealot, but I'm having a lot more fun with it now.
That's a big difference.
It makes a big difference. I tell you straight up, man, if you haven't really been practicing magic in a basic sense to get yourself going, easiest thing in the world for anybody, because it's very neutral, is a 5 elements invocation. Right? You get you make a space, you make within your protective circle, and you have a representative of the 5 elements using an incense stick for ether, and using an acoustic instrument for air. And then the others are fairly obvious, like water in a cup, and for earth, something like nuts, some earthy kind of consumable, right? And then you kind of go through a process in honor of the gods, in honor of your higher self, and then you consume them as if making an offering to them, and you do that, in a kind of a pentagram kind of order, right? And you do that, and that's just some good energy attunement for you and the 5 elements that we interact with here in the Maya.
Oh, yeah.
You're welcome.
Well, real quick, because I do want to at least answer your question.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Hold on 1 second. That's what I thought. We got a break. 3 minutes.
Sounds good.
Don't wait until they tell you you are ready. Get in there. The world might say you are not allowed to yet. I waited a long time out in the world before I gave myself permission to fail. Please, don't even bother asking. Don't bother telling the world you are ready. Show it. Do it. Raise the rest of your life to meet you. Don't search for defining moments, because they will never come. The moments that define you have already happened, and they will already happen again.
Extendivite is more than just a heart tonic. Do you have any of these symptoms? Night cramps in the hands and feet. Your arms and legs often go to sleep. On short walks, do your legs get aches and pains? Is your memory worse than it used to be? Ankles that swell late in the day? Has your blood pressure increased lately? If you answered yes to even one of these questions, you may have early warning signs of arterial blockages. Your body is saying that it is time to take Extendivite. These are not the normal signs of aging. They are the warning signs that accompany blocked arteries. Get your Extendivite today. Extendivite is available in capsule or liquid form for just $69.95 for a 2-month supply. To get started, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822, or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
For millennia, mankind has been searching for answers to the big questions, such as, where did the universe come from? Where did we come from? Why are we here? Are we alone? And just what the heck is the Sasquatch all about? I can't promise you answers, and neither can the Woo Crew, but they invite you to join them Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, midnight in the UK, for Freaky Friday, exclusively on Truth Frequency Radio. Spirituality, multiverse, quantum mechanics, the occult, and so much conspiracy analysis that it will make your mind melt. Take my word for it. Freaky Friday. It's more than a show. It's a way of life. I'm Stephen Hawking, and I am proud to be a Wookiee.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception.
TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
All right, we are back on the air. It is the bottom of the hour. Thanks for tuning in. This is TFRLIVE.com. You're listening to Trigenesis with Zerilath, and I have on tonight my buddy Nick, the New York Patriot and host of the Occult Rejects and Friends podcast, and we've been having a conversation a little bit here about his backstory, his history, his relationship with the occult and secret societies and the research therein. And in particular, we've been talking about Left Hand Path, OTO, and Crowley. And the break had crept up right when Nick was about to drop a point, and I'm going to give him the mic.
Thank you. Yeah, so back to, I guess, why I left and what I think like their deal is. Eventually, this was probably about 6 months or so prior to COVID. I was really heavily getting into shadow work again, or just, changing myself. I was reading a lot of like the Kabbalion, the Gita. I was getting into other things like besides even like thelemic stuff and just magic, more of like psychological stuff. And I really wasn't going anymore because I had even just felt there that like the people, and I'm not trying to sound cocky or anything, but I just felt like, the people I'm around like aren't really emulating like what I'm trying to do. So I just like thought it was just kind of silly even going. So yeah, I was getting into that, and then eventually like just practicing at home and doing my own stuff. In my opinion, I started to have like real magical experiences, and when I started to realize like what I think I had to go through to do that, I started thinking like, the OTO really doesn't kind of give the image of kind of like releasing the handcuffs of the things that kind of control you. It seems to like almost glorify the handcuffs. And I'm like, if there's anybody who's in that place that actually knows magic or has experienced like serious magic, like I would think you would know, like, that most of these people here have it, backwards almost.
Well, a lot of the people doing magic, all their, most of their spells that they show you are ultimately they're conjuration and binding spells and then dismissals for spirits. And then what happens is a lot of these orders, especially Left Hand Path, but also the Right Hand Path, when you talk about like angel invocations and things like that, it's about going through the processes that appeals brings in certain spirits that are as promised to have a certain ability and power to operate and help you do as thou wilt, right? You want something, you need something done, you want to do this whole thing, and you're going to do as you will, and of course, that's will within love. It's just like, I'm not gonna bastardize the quotes because it's so easy to forget that Crowley said, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, and the whole of the law is love, or something to that effect. It's just like when you read the whole thing, it's actually not evil, right? Crowley was a mixed. Crowley was quite the mixed bag of a guy who probably got a few people killed, but just by just by being like, yeah, come do this thing, this crazy thing with me. Oh, you want to climb the mountain with me? Yeah, let's go. Well, holy shit, you didn't make it. Like, cause like he didn't sit there and say, "No, dude, if you climb the mountain, it's gonna fucking kill you." No, he was like, "Come climb the mountain," because that's what they wanted to do. And then they realized they didn't want to do it when it was over, right? You know, like there's all these different testimonies that I caught from watching all these different documentaries and all that stuff, and I was just like, "Oh man, he's kind of a piece of shit." But but also he's not really doing anything wrong at the same time. I'm just looking at him in this void of judgment, and I'm just like, that's crazy the way he did that. And I don't know if I can 100% fault him because of when you look at the details and you allege that it goes that way.
You know what? I think this is actually this is kind of almost a good point to even get into about like what I think they're kind of into. Like real quick, eventually once I stopped going, COVID came. And I got a mass email. You know, there's mass emails sent to where they were saying that they were closing down because of COVID. They were listening to the CDC, which I thought was just hysterical. Because I'm like, the churches are open, so Jesus has more balls than Horus, I guess. You know, I don't know. So they shut down for that, and they started doing Zoom things. And I was like, you know what? I think I could deal with the Zoom. Maybe I'll jump in on Zoom because sometimes they were covering books or they were doing, you know, a few interesting things that I just had to pop in my headphones, listen, say what's up, my name when everybody introduces themselves, and I didn't have to like do anything. Right. You know, I didn't have to look at anybody. I could be doing something around the house. Yeah. Just listen. So I did that a few times, and then one day, you know, the George Floyd stuff had happened. I was like, I get an email talking about they were going to try to set something up. I think it was neither that day or the next day if we wanted to talk about this whole George Floyd situation. And I'm like, why? The OTO is pretty much like, and you know, I hate that I always quote the Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not that I'm promoting them, but I just know they're very similar to like, we're not supposed to have an opinion about anything except for Alcoholics Anonymous. The OTO is supposed to be the same way. So like, why are you talking? Why are we having a kumbaya about what happened with George Floyd? So I was like, I have to go on this. I got to listen to this. So I went on, and it almost became like group therapy where they talked about the whole racism thing, and then everybody got to go around the room if they wanted to, or go around the Zoom if they wanted to, and talk about their experiences with racism. And, you know, they ended up getting onto this dude that, again, you know, I had said that I put up on a pedestal earlier. I thought, like, you know, he was the shit because he was a couple of degrees higher. He seemed all like, you know, like he was all zen and everything. This guy started running his mouth about how if they're going to deem Antifa domestic terrorists, our rights is everything just flew out the window. We got to stick up for them. Do you guys want to start protesting? Do you guys want to meet up? They start going on about BLM. And I was like, yo, this just turned into like a far left group talk.
Right.
You know, and like, you know, I started noticing people that I was friends with on Facebook even started like putting stuff in there on their pictures. Some of them even had like communist, socialist. I was like, wow, everybody's just coming out of the woodworks now about what they're into, you know? And I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And that was the last time that I ever attended anything. And finally getting to my point, you know, you had said before that, you know, Crowley just had to give those guys the option to go hiking with him up the mountain. What I think the OTO is really good at is kind of like handing people options and like creating egregores to like feed them shit. Like, you know, you just have to like, even with this whole transgender thing, in my opinion, until somebody knows that this thing exists and it's an option to choose to be, it's not a problem. If you grew up and didn't know what a transgender person was, you probably never choose to do it because you didn't know it exists. You didn't know it was an option to choose.
Right.
So I do feel the OTO is very big on creating things for people to latch onto, giving people handcuffs, and just from other things, because I know like other people like James Wasserman and other people had written things about egregores, and, you know, from things that I've gotten out of their stuff, I do think that egregores is a big thing with the Ordo Templi Orientis.
Yeah, egregores are a big thing.
Kind of in general, really, but
it's a big thing with all these things that they want to do. I mean, like I said, I was making I asked you that question about the spirits because it was kind of a rhetorical question, right? It's like that's what I eventually noticed with all these people is that a lot of it is various degrees of spirit, demon, daemon, invocation, so on and so forth. And the limitation there is that they're still they have to make a deal with a power outside of themselves to do something for them, right? And then even if you do it nearly 100% right, it can be a hairy situation that gets you in trouble, right? Like I could understand and identify when I read Lon Milo Duquette's My Life with Spirits, and he talks about some of the ordeals he went through as he was running and gunning on doing his spellcraft, and all of his spellcraft was involved in getting a spirit to do a thing for him, right? And great book, and I wasn't against anything going. Like, I loved his intentions and his good heart and his good humor in the story, right? But also, like, because when I do magic, I'm mostly focused on me, and not requiring a spirit latching, right? And so I think you'll find that that's one of the big differences, is that a lot of these groups are vessels for spirits. That's a different.
My opinion, that's even another thing with the
Yeah.
OTO. And I was saying it before, kind of like they seem to present. For my opinion, I think like they kind of present, or like a lot of their look and their design and like the way that they guys advertise themselves, they do, in my opinion, kind of, or I think, are showing you the handcuffs. But I don't think people understand it. Like, they're very over sexualized, and sex is one of the easiest things to like fall off, and find yourself totally to an extreme sometimes.
Yeah.
So I do think like that's there. They're very much into like, liberal, very left-leaning, into race. They're very social justice warriors. I mean, again, like I was saying before, they really shouldn't have a stance on anything besides the magical community, but yet they'll go into the New York Gay Pride Parade and they'll march down with all of them with an OTO Gay Pride flag.
Well, the thing is that their world, just like it was revealed with a whole lot of other people, right? It's just like we live in a different world now. The world, the ordinary world that we lived in before had psychic space for the OTO to be the way that they are without anybody noticing and them getting all this chance to exploit people. They liked it, right? The zeitgeist of that period of time was your apocalypse, your revelation, right? Because someone else was trying to invoke a world that was a threat to their world, and then they would explain to you their problem with the world as they saw it, and that was a spell that either they were participating in or was also put on them by a higher order of dark sorcery that got them to be their own little psychic conduit for these kinds of things by convincing them that there was a threat to their world that was not at all what it was, and then in the process they destroyed their own world.
I do think, in my opinion, the OTO, and I also think this kind of goes with a lot of secret societies, but again, like this is only my experience, but like even with my old co-host from the past, who he was in something, I'm not sure if it was really the Golden Dawn, but I do believe he was in something. His experience, if it was truthful, and like other people that I've spoken to and other things, I do think when you go to these secret societies, I don't think you're going to have actually an easier chance to learn any truth. I think you're actually going to get slammed with a bunch of more bullshit, and you're actually going to have to sift through it harder to really find the gems. I do think, from my experience with the OTO, I do think it's almost a psyop itself. That, like, unless you go there and you can't take everything
Yeah.
100%. You're going to have to always be critical of everything. And if you don't, I think you will find yourself in a slippery slope, and you're moving farther away from magic, actually.
I find a theme that there's a lot of ways that people don't want to go because they fear that it's associated with an antithetical disposition to their values, right? Such as your relationship with your ancestry. See, I'm in the pagan heathen conversation, right? And so I'm talking to a lot of different guys that are specifically talking about those cultural tropes, thus also those magical tropes, their relationship in history, what the actual history was, what it ought to be today, what we think it ought to be in the future. It's the debate versus Reconstructionism versus revisionism, etc., right? And that's all the infighting going on in heathenry. Does heathenry have a place for, associated with Wicca and these kinds of conversations, right? And so I listen to left-wing heathens, I listen to right-wing heathens, and the same thing kind of oozes up. And I still like both of them, right? There's stuff that, I'd want to wrestle them, to the ground about in disagreements, right? It's just like I really like the Nordic Animism channel. The guy who runs that channel, he's Swedish, I believe. He's ultra liberal, talks about anti-colonialism and all this stuff. But I think he's got some really interesting ideas outside of all that, and he isn't so inundatedly like that he never makes content that isn't otherwise, although he is doing a decent bit of that right now. But at the same time, it's just like I'm learning. It's a European way of looking at it anyway, and I can be a little bit more reserved than when I hear an American pagan talking as such, right? And so it's permeating everything. Because the script that's flipped for me, and then everybody started talking about it is because, see, the pagans were always portrayed as some sort of left-wing thing in culture, right? It was just because they weren't Christians, the pagans, they had fertility cults with orgies all the time, and et cetera, right? And we get this idea from nothing more than saying that everybody did what Rome did, just with less fancy coliseums, right? That was kind of the two-dimensional look at heathenry before you actually cracked open some serious history, anthropology, epistemology, following the ancient languages and the actual artifacts of and archaeology of the matter, and you discover that no. Christianity is merely just being chill, at times, but Christianity is actually the problem because they forgive sin. The pagans actually were also like what you thought the Christians were, but they were far less forgiving of sin than the Christians were.
It's interesting. I know.
So there was all of that morality in there. You'll find plenty of laws against homosexuality, a term called ergi in the Old Norse, right? Right? And these were people that believed in a high level of magic, right? They're carving the runes into the rocks, and and other seafaring. They're using it in seafaring implementations, and the reason why they put dragon heads on their ships, especially because boats represent psychonauts, the transference between this world and the afterlife, and this is all ingrained in all the ways that we lived in the Bronze Age, right, which is the earliest records. So groups like the OTO are exploiting the forgiveness of Christians in reality. That's what you're seeing. The exploitation of forgiveness. To be forgiven for their sins. That's why they expect the Christians to forgive the pedophiles, and that's where we're at today in the morality conversation. Can you forgive a pedophile, a minor attracted person?
Oh
I'm a heathen. I say no.
God. No, I agree. But yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Kind of like play on the sin forgiveness.
Yeah. Rome was a very moral place. It was falling apart in the end because the Christians were turning a blind eye to all of that. And that's why in the end it was a Roman bathhouse, but it was no such thing prior generations.
I mean, I've even noticed, like, I mean, I'm sure you might have even noticed it too, like in the magical community when it comes to magicians and witches. I mean, there's a lot of people who are automatically like, as soon as you get into this stuff, anything that's considered a sin is just actually, false and wrong, and it's just holding you down. And it's like, well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe some of them are good guidelines on how to live.
Well, that works as a blanket statement when every day you're being stressed with sin in the conversation. There's, because the right wing, the right hand path in its abusive form beats you over the head with sin all damn day, right? That's how these two play against each other. The right hand path also has its evils, right? To bring up the pedophile argument, the pedophile exemplification is going to have its equal and opposite reaction on the right, as you're going to get a whole bunch of guys that says, I'm Christian Jesus Rambo Jim Caviezel, right? And now everybody thinks they can. This is giving them a moral permission slip. They don't care about the consequences of the system or what the government is capable of doing. I'd rather die for this kind of murdering a pedophile and letting God throw me into hell, because that's better than watching all these children suffer. I'll risk never being forgiven by God for killing people I believe are pedophiles in his name. That's the right wing going crazy. That's the right hand path. That could be an extremist Masonic lodge. The Masons are definitely more right-hand occultism.
Yeah, it's like you have on one side, you'll have like a strict, like the only thing you can have is like salt and pepper as the seasonings, and then the other side, it's like they got the whole kitchen. Yeah, take all of it. It's like one side does kind of like make you, I guess, kind of like judges. Take away from life, I guess, and then the other one's like just trying to push it too far. That is really a good way to, like, I really think a good observation, good way to put it.
Yeah. It's the false binary that the Gnostic Church, another right hand path system, which has a lot of cool people in it. I don't got a lot of bad things to say about the Gnostics, other than they're wrong that the demiurge has them, other than the demiurge as an egregore, right? It has you if you choose to give the egregore power. Do whatever ritual you need to do to not have that egregore in your life, but the demiurge is not a real thing in the cosmology. It's a part of your construct that people fooled you into creating in your own mind.
Yeah, it's like an archetype.
Yeah. We're coming up on another break for the top of the hour shortly. When we get back from this break, I thought you were doing a amazing job with the breakdown of the anatomy of the eye on an occult and esoteric level. So I thought we would discuss that, because that seems to be a big, fresh one that you're jumping your ideas off of as of late.
Yes.
And that one made me think of pop quiz. Did you watch the video I sent you from James True?
Oh. No,
Not
you know
yet.
what?
No
I'm
worries.
gonna be honest, I haven't.
No worries.
The last I've been packing and moving.
All right. I won't.
I'm so
all right. So either way, the audience wouldn't be prepped on this either. So I don't want to lose the audience, but what he talks about in Eye of Ra Like, if you don't know James True's material, most people get introduced to James True through the Eye of Ra lecture he did on his channel. That was the one that really kind of put him there, because he's the one that kind of summed up the whole way that your soul perceives reality through the eye, and there's anatomy going on in there, and then he gets into a very specific conclusion based on things he picked up in Egyptian mythology and some other comparisons to support his argument. Rock solid, good stuff. You can live your life on that stuff.
Yeah, I think even like one of the episodes you did send me, I think even the thumbnail is like an eyeball on it. Like it's
yes.
Yeah, you won't miss it if you go to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Oh yeah. There's a tremendous amount of things I'm dying to talk about. The music should be starting any second right now. Guys, you are listening to Zerilath having an interview with New York Patriot, the Occult Rejects podcast. And we've got another hour of this to go. We're going to be talking about the occult secrets of the eye, of the human eye, and then a little bit later in the last segment, we're going to talk about occult serial killers and things. Oh yeah, some good lighthearted topics coming right up. There it is.
This is iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio makes you want to move.
When you have a great melody, a song lasts forever.
Instantly connected.
I love it when the beat goes.
Did you know you can listen to Truth Frequency Radio on iHeartRadio? Just download the app to your smart car, smartphone, or smart TV and get the best of TFR wherever you are.
Radio.
I'll see you there.
So, you love talk radio, then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This is about I say what I say, do what I do. Expression goes, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll find out. It's been a long day for y'all. I just finished the last meeting. I made it clear to President Putin. I told him, corn pop for the bad dude. Bottom line is, I told President Putin, I got hairy legs. After 2 hours there, we looked at each other like, okay, what next? You've heard me say this before, again and again. I'm going to keep saying it. Come on, man. I made it clear. Well, I tell you what, I'm following the rules, man. This is about I say what I say, do what I do. I did what I came to do. We'll find out. This is about I say what I say, do what I do. Expression goes, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll find out. Biden said he'd invade Russia. You know, that was a joke. This is not a kumbaya moment. Let's hug and love each other. Folks, look, I caught part of President Putin's press conference. I told him, come on, man. I'm going to keep saying it. Come on, man. And so it was kind of after well, anyway. This is about I say what I say, do what I do. I did what I came to do. We'll find out. This is about I say what I say, do what I do. Expression goes, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll find out.
Я думаю, что для всех очевидным является тот факт, что президент Байден, когда конкретно там завтра, послезавтра, это вопрос коллеги на рабочем уровне определяться с составом этих делегаций. Не было никакой враждебности, наоборот, наша встреча происходила. Я думаю, ничего сложного не скажу. Это будет понятно в торговые отношения, да. Еще говорили о сотрудничестве в Арктике.
This is about I say what I say, do what I do. I did what I came to do.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. It is the top of the hour. I am having the most excellent of conversations with Nick, the New York Patriot, the host of the Occult Rejects podcast. And we have been having at it for the last hour, talking about Nick's history in New York and growing up and getting interested in the occult, and then his experience with it in retrospect, and discussing his experiences within the OTO. And now he's doing his podcast, and I was excited to want to talk a little bit about what he's doing in his podcast. So I wanted to go over two subjects that were indicative of his work. We're going to kick things off. We're definitely going to spend a whole segment talking about this, which is the eye. You did a 3-part epic with your co-hosts, talking about the anatomy of the eye and what all those functioning parts do, and then noticing direct correlations to occult symbolism, especially things like the Iron Cross, which that was actually pretty cool. I did not know that, but it made sense. And I think one of your co-hosts said in a slightly different picture of it that it looked like it was a specific kind of flower or cross that looked like a flower. And
yeah, I can't. I know what you're talking
and
about
I
that.
looked at it and I said, wait a minute, I know that is the is a 5-petaled flower. The Windsor Rose? No, not Windsor. It was a different house. Tudor. The Tudor Rose. The Tudor Rose is the emblem flagged on the death card in Rider-Waite-Smith.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I did a whole video on that card as part of a 3-video series where I demonstrate that not only is that pattern the Tudor cross, but also that pattern shows up at this particular frequency in cymatic hertz. I found the cymatic hertz frequency for the for the Tudor Rose.
Oh, wow. You know, the Golden Dawn also uses you know how there's magic squares? The Golden Dawn also uses like a rose type way to make sigils instead of a magic square. I wonder if there's any correlation.
Well, the numerology, right? The mechanics, the mathematics behind it. Things have to fit the uniformity of the mathematical equation that you're building it off of, right? Norse magic most of the time operates on a principle of 9. Christian magic on a principle of 7, right? Elemental magic operates on a principle of 5. I mentioned that to you earlier in the show.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the eyeball series, you know, and not to get into it too much, but like when I started having like magical experiences, there was like even changes going on within like my own self, like physically, like, you know, problems seeing, you know, problems even like at one point I ended up in the hospital, actually. I don't know if I ever even explained any of that to you or if you knew that.
No.
But
no.
yeah, at one
If you
point
mentioned it,
I just was
missed
having
it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry if you mentioned it on one of your episodes that I've actually watched. I've missed
so
it.
long ago, anyways.
I'm playing a lot of catch up, trying to get into it because I usually don't think about like listening to stuff about crimes or whatever. So I was really focused on that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But eventually I ended up, I was having problems where like it felt like my head was going to explode. Like it was hurting really bad. I couldn't like really see too well. And like even my vision, like as crazy as this is going to sound, like there was times where it looked like things were appearing as like light shooting out of the ground and then taking into form whatever it was. And I was like, oh, there's like something wrong. Like there's something, wrong with me here.
Okay.
Even after the experience, one of my pupils was 4 millimeters bigger than my other one. So I was like, there's something wrong with my eyeball. So eventually, and like I felt like I was having it literally felt like electricity going down my legs, like almost like constant static cling. And it was really weird. So eventually, like I went to the hospital because I was like, yo, I don't know what's wrong with me. I was like, my head feels like it's going to pop. I feel like a battery that's about to like explode. My legs are shaking, trembling sometimes. I can't even stand. I was like, I don't know if I'm having a seizure. I said, look at my eye. My eye's all screwed up. I was like, I don't know like why this happened at all. And I was there for a few days and, whatever. They were like, we think you have migraines. And they gave me a bag of blood and a bag of saline because they said my hemoglobin was through the roof and my blood was basically like syrup. Now, I've never had that issue before, and I've never had that issue again after the fact.
That was what year?
That was back right before COVID or around COVID.
Okay.
It was right before COVID.
Okay. Oh, very, very interesting. Yeah, everybody was starting to get all sorts of weird symptoms within about a 1 to 3 month period ahead of COVID becoming the narrative, right? Except for me, nothing fucking happened to me in like 4 fucking years. So it's just like, yeah, fuck you. I'm like those guys that were chosen in The Stand, because literally like we went through Stephen King's The Stand, and I'm just like, well, I'm not getting sick by anything at all. This means I'm on Mother Abigail's side, doesn't it? Where's Gary Sinise? I want to stand next to Gary Sinise at the apocalypse.
Gary Sinise. But through that whole like thing, like even after I had these experiences and like before I eventually like took myself somewhere, I for some reason had this idea that like there had to have been some sort of physical change like within inside like my head. Like I really was thinking like something might have changed with my eye, and I was wondering like was I actually in some way looking back inside my head, or did I pop my pineal gland open? Was I looking inside instead of out in this world? I don't know why, but that was just what stuck with me, and there was things going on. It just made me think that. So when I left the hospital, they were like really kind of like more in like, you're going to have to go see an eye specialist. We really have no answer to give you about why your pupil is bigger than the other one. But I mean, your eyesight is fine. So like, we really don't know what to say. Go to a specialist. I went like 2 weeks later. It was about 3 millimeters at that point. It was starting to go down, but it was still different size. And she really didn't know what was wrong, and like had told me like, you're still seeing fine. So like, I really, it is weird, but I'm not saying it's not an issue, but like, it's not causing any eye problems. So I wouldn't worry too much, but it is weird. And I have the unicrystal hexagram on my arm. I do have that tattoo. And I had asked her, I said, this is going to sound crazy, but I said, is it possible to like actually like look inside your head? Or like go back, like not. It was just weird. And she looked at me and she's like, "Well, no, not really." She said, and then she was like, "This is how your eyes work and the way the light and reflection and all that." And she draws this little thing on the paper, and I was like, "Well, look at my tattoo." I said, "Doesn't that look a lot like that too?" And she's looking at it and she's like, "Wow." She's like, "What is that?" And then I told her, and I even told her my whole situation. And she's like, damn, she's like, this is actually really weird. And she was interested in it and asked me, if you can get the paperwork from the hospital, I'll look at it. She's like, I want to like see if there was any other effects on your body and this and that. I never went back. But because of that, like that, even though she was telling me no, but then drew something almost like the unicrystal hexagram, I was like, something ain't right here. And started like kind of looking into this stuff, and I was seeing a lot of stuff that I thought to me was very much occult symbolism and things that I've seen before. But I was like, I really don't like. I don't have the finesse to explain the whole anatomy.
Yeah. Dude, that sounds like, did I show you the clip that I made? Did I tell you that you got to check out this movie called Branded 2020? I always talk about this film.
No.
That movie has a guy who was an insider in marketing, and then his world got destroyed, and he ended up going through a shamanic initiation, and then on the other side of the shamanic initiation, he could see spirits. It's a fucking awesome movie, and that sounds a little bit like what you went through, and for me, being the heathen that I am, I'd be remiss if I did not invoke Odin's name, because this was happening to just one of your eyes, and there was lightning, there was electricity involved, and Odin he's not the god of thunder, but he is a storm god, because he is a war god. If you're a war god, you're also a storm god. They're kind of synonymous. That's why Yahweh is also a storm god, and Zeus, who is a thunder god, is also a storm god, right? And so that's electrical brain activity. That's also the activity of your nervous system, which is equivalent to the Hindu concept of Shakti, right? Yes. So you may have had a Votanic awakening, right? You may have, the All-Father may have activated you.
I have wondered if his that's a really good way to put it, what you were saying with it. I since getting into the Eyeball series and knowing very little about those gods, I have questioned like ones associated with electricity and the storms. Like I think that might actually have to do with like in your eye, eventually the sunlight that goes into it will be turned into electricity, an electric impulse in your optic nerve.
Right.
So I can see like what you're even getting at, but I have questioned even if excuse me if I'm wrong, it might be ravens that he has, if those actually even are like your eyeballs, and if they're part of like the pupil, if they're representing the pupil in your eyes.
Maybe. So if there's any if any part of the pupil of your eye is associated with thought and memory, then Hugin and Moonin may be able to be placed there. Hugin and Moonin mean thought and memory.
Ooh.
And so in a respect, they kind of represent the bicameral fissure of the brain. Memory is a very left-brained thing. And thought is also akin to imagination, and that's all very right-brained things.
Thought, it's very close to Toth.
Yes. Toth or Tahuti in the archaic sense of the word. And Tahuti is not a god. Tahuti is a position. It's a title. It's an office, if you will, right? Remember that there's a pseudo kind of bureaucratic vibe to the relationship of Egyptian pantheons, right? Because, Osiris's throne and its authority is got its own kind of lore that is attached to the story of Osiris, right?
Sometimes I think they're almost like showing like levels of atonement in a sense. So like I'm trying to add to like what you were saying.
No. You are right. It's this beautiful tapestry of interpretations of combining things we see in the natural world on Earth and the things we see in the natural world in the sky, right? And we're trying to put all those things together. And this is the primary reason why you always have two pantheons within each culture, a pantheon of sky gods and a pantheon of earth gods. And the earth gods are the ones that eventually became, quote, demonized once they started associating horned spirits, which were various forms of nature spirits, with evil. And, like most horned creatures are typically herbivores. So you got to think about the irony there of making you afraid of something that doesn't eat meat. You know, goats don't eat meat. What the hell are you so scared of?
Yeah, that's a really good.
You know, your god is a lion snake. Both those things eat meat. It's just,
yeah, that's so funny. But you gotta be a vegan.
yes. Well, you see, we're trying to starve. We're trying to starve the demiurge by feeding him unnutritious mortals.
You know, and real quick, it just even something that like is another reason why I even thought about like the ravens and like even the birds is that you know, looking at like how I was, you know, when like I was talking about my eyeball, and that was like even something that I started to like look into, and I do question now, like, is it even why like Horus and Toth or Tahuti, like sometimes that they're birds or birds used? Technically, if you want to look at it, my eyes, one was stuck in fight mode and the other one was stuck in flight mode. You have fight and flight, and your pupil changes for each one. One gets smaller and one gets bigger. And I had looked up, you know, looking up light reflection, you know, how light changes in your eyes depending on your pupil. And I had one that was pinned and one that was regular. And when you see the way the light reflects off of your lens back into your head is the same exact way the lights are on 20th Century Fox. Fight and flight mode. And I do believe that that is something that will change in your eyes when you experience magic, in a sense. It could be why Horus flies, why he also has a spear.
Well, right. Well, you know, anybody who's experienced Psychonaut taking entheogens knows that you're going to deal with massive pupil dilation, right? You know, I've taken ayahuasca. I mean, things have to be really dark because you're not going to have a freaking iris to speak of. You're going to be wide the F open and everything is going to hurt your eyes. So you typically need a dark, very low light, maybe a candle. Right.
Yo, that was another weird thing. That was like one of the things too that like brought me to go to the hospital. Light was killing me for like 2 or 3 days. All I had lit in my house was candles.
Right. I believe when you're high on cocaine, I think it also dilates your pupils, which is why people that take cocaine during the day wear sunglasses and also sometimes during the night because they have the pupil dilation. Now the pupil dilation is, you know, that's you're bringing in more light. You're trying to bring in more awareness. I'm assuming that that's for flight because you need to expand to be able to see all your exits, right? To be able to know your whole environment. Where fight, you would be more, quote, focused. Your pupil is bringing in less light because it wants to see the detail of a specific target which it wishes to establish, right?
It's like so focused flight.
Yeah. This makes sense.
Kind of like what Elon Musk has been doing.
Right. Now you see, here's the deal with Odin and his eye. He sacrifices his eye willingly. He meets up at the well of memory and the god of memory named Mimir, and Mimir tells Odin that, you know, the only way that you are going to get what you want is you would have to remove your own eye and put it in the well of memory and leave it there forever. So he plucks out his own eye and sticks it in this magical well that shows him basically the archives of all of the past. Right? This is also like his raven, Moonin. Moonin is the memory raven, right? And the memory raven goes deep. It can go all the way back. Odin's thing as the All-Father is that you're tracking the sun's bloodline. Divine. It's a divine right of kings thing. But it's just your birthright kind of thing. This is like any man. is going to have that devotion towards earliest original ancestor, because he is the original patron of the ancestors of your god, and is his look as a human, his mortalization, the depiction of him with the beard and the eye, to have human features at all, is a model of the original mystic elder that channeled him. That's what's going on with that relationship, right? And it's just a particular way of looking back and being proud of who you are, where you came from, right? But of course, that can be radicalized, as anything can be, and that's where racists come from. But every religion has its ability to do this.
Yes.
Yeah. So at any rate, so you've got one eye that is always in reflection mode, always in memory mode, right? He still has two eyes. It's just that one eye is ethereally in the well of Mimir, and that ritual gives him the ability to basically remember deep knowledge. But he's also terrified of losing that memory because it's tied to his raven, and his raven is out there among threats.
Nice, I like that. But I don't know if you had Sword. Another thing, just tossing real quick, so give people like an idea of some of the stuff that I covered. Just an easy thing to explain.
Yeah, sure.
Did you see the Grateful Dead logo when we showed it compared to the eyeball?
I did, yes.
Tell me, that shit seems so weird to me.
Right.
You have the hyaloid canal that leads up to the optic nerve. That is like their lightning bolt. Again, where electricity, sunlight or light, turns into electric impulses.
Right.
Where were they about taking LSD and making your pupil bigger?
And you know what? Here's the thing. I think with the cross section of esoteric symbolism, occultism, and the way art works, right? The Grateful Dead likely, they had to conceive of that from somewhere. And, and what I think you have to do is you have to go back and listen. I'm sure they've had a million stoned ass, tripped ass interviews talking about all this stuff, whether it's a load of shit or not. At least you got to go listen, find out what they say is where it all came from, and then see if perhaps there's a connection between that and something else in symbolism that they didn't know was connected to the eye, but was definitely connected to this other symbolism. And that symbolism is often connected to the eye, but they didn't know it because it was just art to them, right? Yes. It can be like that a lot, because sometimes an artist blindly just goes with it as a vibe, as an aesthetic. Listen, you're the metal, like, as a New York metalhead, and I know you have a familiarity. You know my old band. That's awesome. Did you ever see us live? I was the fat guy on bass.
No, I definitely heard of it when you mentioned it. I was like, oh wow.
Sure, yeah. I was the fat guy on bass. But anyway.
Oh, okay, all right. No, I thought you were the bass player.
Yeah. But anyway, like a lot of these guys, like some of them are kind of deep into the weeds into it. Some of them, they just like looking through the books, and and they don't want to take it too damn seriously. They just like playing with the evilisms of it, right? It depends on how serious of an artist you're taking it to the next level, how deeply you want to know what it has meant, instead of just saying like, I can make this mean anything I want it to mean. It's just like, no, you can't, because the spell works based on the consensus of reality.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you actually have to know what it actually means to everybody before you can successfully insert your meaning. This is how you measure your fucking power as a goddamn magician.
Yeah. But also, I guess let's just to try to like sum up the series real quick without having to go into much.
2 minutes left on this segment. Yeah.
All right, yeah, I can definitely get that in. In the series, basically just showing you like how your eyeball will actually change, the whole thing with your pupil. Like when your pupil changes, there is a whole thing that's going on inside of your eye. So like your lens is moving, the hyaloid canal can start to bend. There is like mixtures of some fluids. And we do show, it's huge, I think, in the Golden Dawn Tarot. I think a lot of that is heavily eyeball and brain based. And even with the Thoth deck, I think that is severely like eyeball and brain based. You will see a lot of symbolism, I think, that we show on those cards that are showing the eyes. And eventually we're also going to cover the brain. That will probably be another 2 or 3 part series where I'll be showing where I think, they take a path from your cornea, or your cornea of your eye all the way back into your brain. I think is being shown in a lot of tarot and a lot of occult symbolism.
Yeah. I will send you the story that I told you about from Norse mythos about the eyes of Thiazi, as which is what we consider the constellation Gemini in Norse astrotheology, right? Some people can argue that Norse astrotheology is not the way our ancients did things, but either way, I've noticed that you can at least make a system, and I'm still learning a whole lot about that. But the Eyes of Thiazi is a very interesting story, and it's always made me think about what that means in particular. Especially when you just think about, well, man, like that's just the stars are watching me, the night sky's watching me as a whole, right? Yeah. All right. Oh, there's the break. We'll be right back.
Easy to sit on the edge of your bed and to think, there are things I'm doing, there are things I'm not doing, that I should be doing, that I could and would do. Small things. But you can start to improve your life incrementally by eliminating those things that are self-evidently making you bitter and miserable. But you have to decide that that's what you want. You are willing to burn off that dead wood, to sacrifice that bitterness and that unhappiness, even though you may feel that you're justified in harboring it. You may even be justified in harboring it because people have very hard lives and sometimes they're very badly mistreated. You need to think it's okay if things improve, and it would be worthwhile for me to start to abandon those things that I'm doing that I know to be harmful to myself.
Extendivite, a 7-herb combination made from garlic, cayenne, hawthorn, bilberry, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle. Extendivite feeds our body with the right nutrients to keep us healthy. Just listen to what Arthur has to say.
Just calling to tell you what a great product you have. I had used this about 10 years ago after I had congestive heart failure. And it fixed me up and got me going for the last 10 years. Lately, I've been having heart trouble again. So I placed another order because this was the only thing that ever worked. And I just wanted to let you know that you have a great product.
To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Travis Cook, America's Evil Genius, here to invite you to join us every Tuesday afternoon here on Truth Frequency Radio. No, on our show, you will not see a bunch of three-piece suits or a cocktail party, and you certainly won't see a bunch of inside the Beltway band. But you will see eye-gouging, crotch-kicking, no-holds-barred political discussion, the likes of which you won't see anywhere else in media. America's Evil Genius. We come to you every Tuesday from the outskirts of war-torn St. Louis, Missouri, where there's always a good race rider sex scandal just around the corner. Join us every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, and noon on the left coast right here on TFRLIVE.com. America's Evil Genius, Travis Cook, on TruthFrequencyRadio.com.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR Frequency Radio.
All right, we are back. One more segment to go. This is TFRLive.com. You're listening to Trigenesis with Zerilath and my very special guest today, Nick, the New York Patriot, host of the Occult Rejects podcast. And we spent some time on the last segment just kind of going over some stuff about the occult symbolism of the eye, because that is a series that I would recommend that you check out over on his podcast. One of the various reasons why I wanted to have him on is because of the thinking that you're going into, Nick, and the and making sure you bring your work with you, you know, just like you got your pictures that corroborate what you're talking about when you see something or whatever. So, you know, there's good visual aids to these kinds of very abstract subject matters. And so I wanted to make sure that I gave a due amount of time to one of these other things I noticed, which was big for you. And I had, like I was talking about earlier, and I had to kind of, you know, try and pay close attention and get what you're getting out of it, right? You know, because, you know, I've watched stuff in the past about like, oh, the Zodiac Killer, so on and so forth, right? And it was just like, seems like it's really fascinating, but I'm like, what's going on? That's like, I don't know. Like I need like the occult angle doesn't sound like an occult angle. It just sounds like just like mathematical riddles or something. And I don't know if I care about it. Right. But you know, now this is a good time for, you know, for the jump in on that. So what got your attention and wanting to like do an expose? Cause you've done a couple of profiles now, right? So what got all this started? What's and what's your and what are you working on now?
Well, I'm actually continuingly I'm doing another episode this week on two different cases, actually. The Idaho 4 case, and you know, even this Gilgo Beach thing, originally I thought it was weird, because I remember a lot of stuff from back in the day, because I didn't live too far from the whole thing, and it was constantly like in our faces. But when this thing popped back up, I was just kind of interested. I didn't even think it was from an occult angle necessarily. I was just like, you know, this is weird, because I even remember back in the day, like there was a guy on his deathbed who like admitted to doing it, and it made the news, and like at least on Long Island, you know. So I was like, I thought this was done and over with, and now this guy pops up and all this stuff. And he even went down to the house the day after they went and raided it or whatever, you know, they were there investigating it. I filmed a little bit of stuff. I spoke to, you know, a couple of the news people there, whatever. But I started like looking into it more. And I was like, you know, this seems like really shady. And I started like just noticing like even stuff with like gematria or things from other occult books. I was like, this seems very thelemic. And I started, you know, I guess because of my experience with the Idaho 4, looking at that case, I thought I started to see a lot of occult symbolism. And that case to me just doesn't make much sense. So I started thinking, like, is this the same thing? And I think some of the reasons why I even do question some true crime now, it doesn't even necessarily have to be occult, but I do think like sometimes there is just like money grabs being done with it. Especially on YouTube, I have noticed true crime and people making plenty of money off of it in like real screwed up ways, not even being monetized. I mean, there's like people who are like coming out and starting GoFundMe's, and when you look into it, it's like, why is that going to like your aunt that you're friends with on Facebook and saying is your aunt? Like, why is the GoFundMe landing in that person's pocket and not the person who's missing his family?
I think if you want to really stir the pot, especially because one of them is in our field, at least one of them. I don't know what the other two are doing, but the West Memphis 3, Damien Eccles. Damien Eccles has his own channel talking about magic.
That is like the funniest thing, because it's like, you went on about how you didn't know anything about this stuff and you weren't into it, but like now you're talking about that's all you did in prison, and now you have a channel making money from it. You're living in a spot in New York I wish I could even afford. Like, how did this happen, dude?
Right. I find the controversy surrounding him interesting. Some people that like have no association with the events that happened. They look at the reports, and if they've made up their mind that something's wrong and that screw the system, a technicality has a piece of shit out free on the streets. Yeah, it kind of sucks how those kind of judgments can mark you for a forever, right? And it's possible that the system happens to not be wrong, right? But yeah, when it's hard to deal with things when your reputation's been badly damaged.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's even things like sometimes I wonder, like, especially I've questioned the whole thing with the West Memphis 3. I mean, I just sometimes, especially with this case with the Gilgo Beach, like, I'm not doubting that it happened. I just sometimes wonder if the way that it was portrayed is just to even like neither scare or just to captivate like people. Because like I've even said, and I'm including myself, and I mean, maybe I'm looking at it a little bit too much, but like, true crime and like, people are kind of like obsessed and oohed and ahhed over like people dying and getting killed. And I sometimes do wonder, is that just like, well, let's just keep feeding them more if that's what they want.
Well, yeah, South Park, informative murder porn. They made a whole episode about that phenomenon in our psyche, right? And I think what's been part of the mental attunement of our age has been mundane human drama, right? And the most exciting of mundane human dramas is the thrill of discovering someone's a psychopath or something like that, right? Where all of a sudden, people, somebody has just become NPC evil and has put everybody in a terrible situation, right? Like Law and Order, SVU, and all these other kinds of crime dramas that we watch. And then that gets spilled over into court TV when they start networking and doing these kind of like head-to-head investigation, whatever. And they used the ratings success of the O.J. Simpson trial to justify this direction in network television.
Yeah, I don't. When it comes to true crime, though, like I was saying before, I think people are starting, even if it's not an occult or a magical psyop, I think they're just taking advantage of it and trying to make money. So I've seen people on YouTube saying that they've even solved the Kylie Rodney case. And I was like, well, why is it still open in the police department and they're still going on with it? Like, you people, I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff.
It's like the Q people that think that Trump secretly is still president, right? It's
the funniest thing whenever I come across someone like that, I'm like, well, he's doing a real crappy job right now. So why would I want to vote again when he runs?
Right, exactly.
Like, he's not doing a good job if he's president.
It's logically screwed up, like, and then you, as you go on, you realize these people are quoting politics the way a Christian, which they happen to be, quotes the Gospels and just the Gospels, with no other context to the whole of the machine of the Bible.
But I guess, like, even like real quick, not to go into it too much, but like even with this whole Rex and Gilgo Beach, I think it clicked in my head like when I was actually down there. I'm like, and people who probably like don't live on Long Island would even know this. But like I was thinking about like the whole thing, with Gilgo Beach, and I'm like, technically that's actually in the town of Babylon. We have a town of Babylon. And Gilgo Beach is part of it. So I was just like, it's kind of weird that we have.
Interesting. I wonder if it's named after Gilgamesh. You think it's Gilgamesh?
But Gilgo, if you run Gilgo numerically through gematria, it does equal 93, which is associated with the OTO. And there is a initiation that starts with Rex as the name as well, too.
Interesting. Interesting.
But so I was thinking about that, and then I'm like, well, I know, Rex isn't from Massapequa, which is technically in the town of Oyster Bay. Now, in the Book of Lies, there is a thing with the whores of Babylon and some dude from the Oyster Bay. So even though Massapequa is called Massapequa, it's in Oyster Bay.
I'll have to go look that up somewhere. I read the Book of Lies as a whole series, and I think it's on my Odyssey channel.
I think there's even something with like Peaches being buried with like their child, and there was somebody buried with the doll. I mean, there's actually like between that and a lot of gematria, like I'm running people's names and I'm getting like, I could run, like, I'm just going to make an example. Rex Uriman. I'm going to get like him or his wife's birthday also matching his name.
Interesting.
I'm getting Omega, or no, I'm getting Alpha in multiple people's names, and that's where he had his storage unit.
Right. Now
I've gotten birth dates. I've gotten dates that he got arrested are showing up under things with family members when I'm running their names.
Now
it's getting really weird.
With gematria, do you think gematria is kind of like matrix code that's like beyond mortal grasp, or do you think that gematria is some sort of spell by evil people? Because the significance is there no matter what, but I think a lot of people are looking for the dark sorcerer casting the gematria synchronicities, but it's too overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, from my opinion, I think it could actually be both. There is times like stuff that I've covered slightly on other true crime. I'll point out like all like the occult numbers and stuff that I see and like the weird stuff. But there is times where I think like, is that just like what you said? Is there a code to like the matrix per se? And like when that stuff happens, are you just going to see those things come up because it just goes with like the frequency of that horrible situation? You know what I'm saying? Like, is there actually a mathematic code that just goes along with crime and death? Maybe I'm just seeing that over and over again. But with this case, I really am kind of almost, a lot of times I'm very in the middle where I don't know. But this one, I do think, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, I do actually think there is serious occult ties to it.
Sure,
and the reasons why I'll even say that is because like even for myself, and I'm saying this as a magician, whenever I like make something or take a name or until I changed my studio, I mean, even down to the clothes I wear sometimes when I go on camera, every color, every numerical value of the word, I'm including that. So if I'm doing that myself and I'm a nobody,
yeah,
I'm assuming somebody of greater knowledge and into it is doing it themselves. Now, I'm not saying Rex definitely was, and all these other people are, but no, I do think Rex was actually, but other ones. But I do think in this case, maybe when I release the second part, and if you were to see it, I think most people who believe that there could be occultism involved after this next episode, I don't think it will be a question anymore. I have enough evidence to show that this stuff is being pulled out of Aleister Crowley books.
You know who I think would be great for you to talk to is I'll try to get you in touch with my friends Corey and Alicia. They haven't been making episodes in a while, but they are part of the Phoenix Enigma podcast. They're from Phoenix, Arizona. They were highly active, up through like 2021 or so, and Corey is quite a master at picking up gematria in the news, in all sorts of events, and he was frontline and center in the independent investigation of the Isaac Cappy death.
Oh, that'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah.
He's even like another thing. I think I'm getting, when I'm running these women's names pizzas coming up, that's how he got caught. I'm getting his truck is coming up. People's birth dates. It's just so weird. It's like, how is this? I'm not saying all of it is personal, purposely done, but I think like there was I do think, something's not right with this. This is my stance on it.
Right. No,
I mean, and beach, beach equals like egg, or like egg of lamb comes up. It's just like, when like the OTO has the serpent and the egg symbolism.
Right. You see, my interest would be like I think the next level of all that is when you're seeing, okay, this word equals that. Well, what's the etymology of this word? Before we jump off to crazy conclusions about what we think it means and why those words do, and like you look at the crossover etymology and check how that makes sense, and whether that changes the meaning of everything that you're looking at, right? Because no doubt you can consciously put any system actively into your ritual work once you once you know what you're once you know what you're doing, and you've gone through basically that personal study of the metaphysics and the theories of the ingredients and the intentions and the order of operations and the way you move your personal energy in the work of doing so, and how you invocate, because thus your etymology has to operate under oral tradition and using very precise tones that go back to, the beginning, right? It's just like I do runes. I can draw rune sigils, I do rune divination, and I can practice Galder. Right? So I'm using the runes on all three levels, divination being a new invention, admittedly.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that's even another thing with I guess with tarot. I mean, I do think like it really does fit well on the Tree of Life of Kabbalah, but like a lot of times sometimes I question it, like maybe divination on yourself, but I don't agree with actually having somebody else read them to you.
Right.
I don't think like you're really getting
with the runes, never.
Yeah, I was just wondering your opinion with runes.
With the runes, never. With tarot card, you can give yourself a consciously honest reading where you just kind of give yourself a personal evaluation of what your biases are, what your selfishnesses are, and just try to accept that about yourself when you do the drawing, and remember that it would be nice to have a second opinion, but let's see what I draw on myself, right? That would be my context for doing it in tarot, right? Right now, because I haven't been doing readings much lately, it's like I'm using my tarot cards on my altar and using them to invoke stuff in my mind.
But yeah, I was just wondering, because that's just my opinion with tarot too. I think like I guess what you had said when it came to like divination, I had just think like the way divination's looked at now, I do think it's kind of like a newer invention.
With the runes, yeah. I mean, with the tarot, I mean, the tarot does have a history of starting off, yes, as a card game, but somebody had put the right numerology into the card game, and because each card is meant to have to be a representation, a manifestation of what that number expresses, just to make it, visually interesting while you're playing this numbers game. That then was the basis for your typical playing card deck. Your 52, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and of course you've got 72. There's 20, 21 with the Fool, right? Of the major arcana. And the major arcana was introduced when they were deliberately turning this game into an occult resource tool. Mm-hmm. Because once they did that, that's when they started making these things much more alchemical, where cups is for the water element and the way that it moves and so on and so forth, right? And at the very least, it revealed something that is true, because at the end of the day, you can argue till you're blue in the face whether you think its origins have a bearing on its authenticity as a product. But when I pick up a Rider-Waite Smith and I give you a reading that you follow up on and it saves your fucking life, the cards are real.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely think there is something in tarot cards. I think they're deep, very deep.
They're extraordinarily deep, and it's really cool doing comparative symbolism. Looking at the 3 or 4 different emperor cards and asking yourself why this one looks so wildly different you can't even recognize it, right?
Yeah, that's actually another thing that I'm even technically still working on. Something else that's coming up. I'm even recording this week for. I am doing also a tarot card series on the major arcana with 2 other people. So I've even started including kind of my aspect of the eyeball stuff in that series as well. So,
all right,
that hasn't finished, and I think because there's 3 of us touching on the major arcana, we're only getting like 3 or 4 cards done in an episode, so it's probably going to be like a 7-part series.
Yeah,
so I think I have like
that,
3 or 4 out now, and I have like the rest of it still
for sure. And we can talk when you want to have me on your show.
Yeah, for sure. Yes,
we can talk, because I'd love to do that, because like I kind of just wish I could get my ass back into busting out tarot videos like once a day, doing a short one, or once a week or whatever. But man, I'm still building a whole lot of other aspects of me. But I'm trying to keep that alive. I do love doing readings. I'm extraordinarily good at them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We could definitely talk about that when I get you on my show.
Excellent.
Yeah, I just wanted to toss that in there too, because it is something else that I'm working on as well, in between all these other things.
Excellent. We got about 5 minutes, so we can keep going for a few more minutes here, talking about all these different things, right? Because the gematria element, it's like I always take note, but then I'm just like, I don't know how I'm gonna ever make the gematria facts of any of these situations serve me, but it's good to know that they're there.
I mean, like, even the weird thing about the Idaho 4 case, they keep going on about this knife sheath. It's like the OJ glove now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you run the name Kabar, Kabar, in gematria, you get 33. It's like, his knife sheath equals 33. The house that he went to was 1122 Kings Road. I mean, you put that together, you get 33. King. I mean, you have the Yadhe Vadhe formula. You start off with King. It's just some of it's really weird. And like even the Brian Kopecker situation, his machete sheath, if you run the name in that, equals 33 as well. It's like, what's going on?
Interesting.
Yeah. It's just really weird. And like another thing I had even noticed, like with some of like I'm even like starting to notice a lot of horror movie, especially like Scream or Halloween kind of aspects coming up in these cases as well. And it's like, is this just part of like the movie aspect that we're being shown on the news about this stuff? Like, you know what I'm getting at? It's just
Yeah. Well, you know, I think there seems to be something going on because, you know, like me, like, you know, you had a hard time identifying me because I had to tell you, yeah, I was a fat guy on the base, right? It's just like, I am not, I died. I died in 2021.
Before I spoke to you, I thought you were like my age or older. And when I heard your voice, I was like, oh, this dude's young.
I'm,
younger
how old do you think I am? How old do you think I am?
I figured you were probably in your 40s or close to late 30s.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, I'm 43. I'm 43.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, damn, you sound good.
Thank you.
I thought you were in your mid 20s.
Oh my God. Yeah. See, I know. I got that. I've held youth together. Like I do not have the wrinkles of a 43-year-old. I still have a full head of hair. It's not too gray at all. It's barely noticeable. Yeah. It's 43 is not bad for me right now. But seriously, in 2021, I ultimately died. I couldn't justify my own living, my own existence, my own continuity as a person until I said, you know, like it was exercise, but it was really a commitment to killing myself and seeing what happens on the other side of it. To be willing to say, I want to completely change, but yet somehow be exactly the same at the same time. And I have achieved that.
That's a really good way to put it, man.
Yeah. Man, this is the end of the show. Okay. Say your last thing.
Well, thank you for having me on. I guess, I mean, if you don't mind, I'll just plug my stuff real
quick. Do it
quick
right now. We're going mute very soon. Go.
Series. It's the Occult Rejects and the NY Patriot. I'm on YouTube and all major podcasts, BitChute, and Rumble. The Occult Rejects and the NY Patriot Show.
All right. Thank you.
Let's go.